So 2 years ago, A&M-Alabama, it was my first opportunity to meet Josh Pate. He sat next to me. I think it was that game. I'm pretty sure it was. Am I right, Josh? Was it that game?
You're so wrong. You want me to tell you a story about how wrong you are?
It was Auburn then. It was one of those two games, right? Okay. Doesn't matter.
You remember, so two years ago, my friend, I'm at OU, Texas for the 11 a.m. kickoff, and I am credentialed to that night's Bama A&M game. And I irresponsibly, egregiously, borderline criminally just decide to fly home because the spread's 3 touchdowns. I'm already sunburned on the day. What's going to really happen down there that I need to be a part of? Because remember, there was a field storming with OU, Texas. I'm already part of one. So I check the box. I feel like I've peaked for the day. And I am on a flight over Arkansas somewhere as the A&M game ends and they're storming the field. And I kid you not, like 80% of that flight was tuned in. It was a Delta flight. 80% of that flight was tuned in, and everyone goes crazy. And it was at that point that I realized I probably have just suffered the biggest failure. Me and Alabama suffered that night for very different reasons. So no, we did not see each other that day, but it was not for fault of your own.
It was a week later that we sat by each other, and that game, A&M's defense was dominant against Auburn, and we get to chit chat. And you've been doing our show since, so I appreciate you coming on. Billy's here in the studio. Hey, Billy.
Hey, David, it wasn't a week later. It was like a month later.
Was it a month later? Oh, yeah, because a week later was Missouri.
Pate needed time to plan the trip, get down there. Yeah, there was like a couple, Missouri, South Carolina, maybe a bye week. Pate, what's up, buddy?
Look, that was one of those things where the specific details weren't really important, so I was not going to correct. I thought the message delivered itself either way, but it's good to see you. You look great.
You always look great. You looked even better the other day when you sent me the picture in the TexAgs shirt. Where were you at, Knoxville or Nashville that day?
I was in Nashville. I was just kind of sauntering around the building downtown. Right. And let me give you a little inside information. I was not the only person in my party that evening to be wearing a TexAgs shirt. That's as far as I can go. That's as much as I can reveal, but it is what it is.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And it wasn't a picture. You're right. It was a video of him walking for a few steps and said he was sauntering. And I said, you know what? You damn right you are. That was an absolute saunter. And why wouldn't you be? It's the middle of college football season. This is peak Josh Pate. And by the way, Pate, the reason I correct on those little things, you ought to see him. If I say anything that I project that I'm not 100% sure of, if he feels that I'm 99%, he's, while I'm talking, looking down on this thing and just typing away. So when I get the opportunity to make a real meaningless correction, I'm coming.
I thought you want me to.
I'm coming off the top rope with an elbow like, or who was it that did the elbow off?
Randy Macho Man Savage.
Michael's move.
Yeah. I might go Superfly Snuka on him if it's a big correction.
Please do.
Well, just keep your shoes on, whatever you do.
Hey, Josh, I know you're high on A&M this game. Talk to me about what the talking points are going to be in both scenarios. A&M wins if Bama wins.
You know what's funny? I don't know if you guys deal with this from the national perspective where I'm supposed to be neutral. Anytime you pick a side in a game where the point spread is 1, the reaction either way is there's no way this can happen. There's no way that can happen. Here's the reality. Either way, whoever should be favored here, it's like a 53-47, 52-48 percentage type of thing. So there are no absolutes in games like this. Where I landed is I know what A&M has up front defensively. And I know they've recruited for this game. Like they've recruited to win the conference, but it's this game. They know they got to get through Bama to win the conference. And so when they started stacking those defensive linemen up and those just front 7 guys in general, and I've seen what I've seen from Bama's offensive line so far this season, hey, there's a world where Bama's offensive line gels, it comes together, they play the game of the year, Milrose kept clean, and they can attack A&M downfield like Miami did. Yeah, there's a world where that happens. There's also a world where Milrose continuously spilling out of the pocket to the right, one time per series Saturday afternoon, and they never get the passing game going. And their ground game is not elite this year. It's pretty good. It's not elite. And all of a sudden it's 9-7 early in the game and no one takes off. And at that point, what do you need? I mean, you need 1 or 2 big plays. Maybe it's special teams. We saw what happened last week. Maybe it's special teams on the side of A&M. But the one thing that I had the most disagreement on this week from what I said versus what apparently the public feels is I don't think in these kind of games you can hide your quarterback. I don't care who your quarterback is. You cannot hide them. And even if it's Max Johnson, even if it's your backup, the one mistake I think people are making is they use backup quarterback as a catch-all. Like all backup quarterbacks are equal, and that's not true. Especially it's not true with the A&M situation. So there were turnover issues, ball security issues last week. I'm not always a big believer those just automatically carry over week to week. So he could play a complete clean game Saturday. But whatever he does, Max Johnson's got to play well for A&M to win the game. Milroe's got to play well for Bama to win the game. And I don't think either side comes out victorious. And the opposing coach is at the lectern postgame saying, I'm really glad we were able to pull this out by hiding Max today or hiding Jalen Milroe. They're going to have to win the game. You can talk about defense, ground game, all you want to. It comes down to about 3 or 4 big throws, or in Milroe's case, 3 or 4 big throws he doesn't make and just throws them into the third row of the stands and lives to fight another down. That's where I landed. But I went A&M because they possess the physicality, home field in their sales. Bama struggled on the road the last couple of years under Nick Saban. And so that's where I landed. I'm not confident in it, but if I had to land on a side, I went A&M.
You didn't say anything just then that I disagreed with. As per usual, a great feel for this thing. And I do think it is. I said that about the quarterback. They asked who would be the star of the game if A&M wins. And I said, the guy at the podium's got to be Max Johnson. And that could be a 210-yard, 2-touchdown, 44-yard rushing day with no turnovers. And a couple clutch fourth quarter throws. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big statistical day. I think if there's a second follow-up to that, I'd be mentioning Le'Veon Moss. I think, like you talked about that Bama running game, I think they're going to have to run the ball. They don't have to be exceptional. They don't win, I don't think, without running the ball well. I think if A&M runs the ball well, that's a real indicator that the Aggies win this thing. If Le'Veon Moss gets up there in that 90 to 110-yard rushing day, I think that's a really good sign for the Aggies. He's been coming on of late, and I think a lot of people forget, he was a flip from Alabama, and it wasn't one of those they cut him loose guys. It was one that they tried to keep and tried to come back on. He's a guy they'd love to have in that backfield right now. And oh, by the way, A&M would love to have Jace McClellan, out of Aledo, Texas. So that backfield battle will be another interesting one as far as the two offenses go.
Yeah, you know what? The highlight shows, and I think just college football culture in general, they look at a quarterback performance, and you're right. You ask, how did a quarterback do today? And they say, hold on a second. And they go to ESPN.com and they pull up the box score. And that is not where the story is told in games like these. I'll tell you what could happen. So we could have a 2nd and 5. Mm-hmm. And Petrino and Fisher, they want to see play action. They want to try and uncork a deep shot down the field. And protection breaks down. And Dallas Turner just levels Max Johnson. But he holds on to the ball. Mm-hmm. And they live to see 3rd and 10. And on 3rd and 10, he rips one over the middle, and it's caught for a first down, and they move the chains. No one goes back and looks at that ball that was held on to as a big play. They forget it. Half of the home fans end up forgetting it. That's the kind of stuff, though, to me, I was talking about Milroe a second ago. He's thrown some egregious interceptions this year. So there could be a play where it's 2nd and 5 and A&M gets heat on him and he doesn't give a play time to develop, but instead of trying to fit it in a window, he just throws it away.
Yeah.
No one thinks of that as a highlight throw, but in reality, unbeknownst to us, because we can't do the A-B scenario and see it play out the other way, but unbeknownst to us, that was the play of the game and no one cares about it. Even the home fans don't even care about it. But that's the stuff in the moment. It's why I always try and have my phone. If I'm at a game, I have the Notepad app pulled up and I put the down distance and time on the clock and remind myself, go back and look at this right here. It's not going to pop on the stat sheet. No one's going to ask about it post game. And sure enough, more times than not in games that are expected to go like this, those to me stand out the most.
Josh, I'll go back to the Miami game with A&M, and I had that exact moment. The Aggies had like a 2nd and 7 getting towards the red zone there before halftime. They're up 17-14, false start, 2nd and 12. Pushes them back outside the 25, They don't get the first down. They have to kick a 42, 43-yard field goal, miss it. Miami gets the ball back with a minute left. They call a timeout. They go down, score a touchdown. That play, and then Evan Stewart doesn't, get a first down on third down. It sets up 4th and 1. Trey Zune jumps off sides on the opening drive of the third quarter at about the 5 or 6 yard line. Those two plays look like really you could go back to 2 false starts.
Yep.
A&M, at the very least, Miami doesn't score the touchdown. They don't get the ball back, and A&M probably kicks a field goal. You're talking about a potentially as much as an 18-point swing there. Mm-hmm. The Aggies either get a field goal or they score a touchdown there. Miami doesn't score, and A&M probably scores instead of a touchdown. And the game's it's 31-14, a drive in the third quarter. So I'm like you. I probably should write them down, but I make those same mental notes on those little plays, and they do matter, and I think they are going to matter this Saturday because Bama is still the best defense A&M will play this year. They might be the best team A&M will play this year, and I think that might say more about A&M's schedule than it does this 2023 Bama team.
Do you guys think this is an SEC Western Division title game? Because I do.
Can be.
I've been wrestling with that, and here's why I think it is, Josh. I think Bama will either win out or lose one if they beat A&M. Whether that's to Tennessee, LSU, or LSU, I don't know. But I think if Bama wins, they're going to win the West. On A&M's side, there's so much work still to be done at Tennessee, at Ole Miss, at LSU. Rattler and Will Rogers coming in here, who both beat A&M last year. But what I do think is this. If A&M's good enough to beat Bama Saturday, I think this team's just going up from there.
Yeah,
so
I do
to answer, you agree? Yeah, so to answer your question, yes.
Yep, I completely agree. The other thing, just to go back really quick to what we were talking about there, the general fan watches this game this Saturday. It's a perfect example of what we were talking about because Jimbo looks like a psychopath on the sideline during a game. Saban looks like a psychopath on the sideline during a game, and there's so much angst and there's so much nervous energy. And the normal person looks at that and says, wow, why are they so worked up? Well, they're worked up because they know what we were just talking about is true. Any moment in a game decides the game. And it's like walking through a fun house and you don't know around which corner the dude's hiding trying to terrify you. But imagine your entire job being on the line instead of just, I hope I don't jump and get scared and make myself look like an idiot. Like that's the paranoia that you have to coach with. And that's why you got to yell at dudes. If it's 35-20 early fourth quarter, and you got 10 on the field on special teams and you just chew some kid out. Well, the normal person at home says, wow, did it really need to rise to that level? It does. It does because that coach, unlike you, knows what could have happened there. You're not thinking like that. It's always a kind of a fun little subplot to a college football game.
Josh, since we brought up Miami, I'm going to ask you something that came up in my conversation with Greg McElroy. When you look at what the A&M defense did against Miami and what they've done since SEC play, where are you more leaning towards their defense? Is it more what we've seen here in SEC play or potentially what you saw against Miami?
No, I'm not going to ignore what I saw against Miami, but the hallmark of any good team is they start to improve at some point during the season. Now, the most fun for me, since we don't have preseason in this sport, is to check in week 1 and week 2, and then check in week 5 or 6, which is roughly where we are now, and see not who starts to do this, but who starts to do this right here, and just massively, rapidly scale. Now, by the nature of having a lot of talent on your roster, it's more likely that a team that does that is an ultra talented team, a top 5 roster. A&M's got a top 5 roster, so it's more likely. And that's what I think we may be seeing with them. Also, I guess it's unfortunate that it has to be this way, but some teams are full of players that need to taste their own blood a little bit before they really kick it in gear. Yeah. And maybe that's what we saw a little bit with A&M. Whatever the case may be, one of the biggest shortcomings people have in trying to figure the sport out is they start to cement their opinion in September. Nothing is cemented in September. Unit-wise, side of the ball wise, team wise. This is a game that is played by 19, 20, 21-year-old kids who themselves are not even done growing physically, much less mentally. And if you put a collection of that together, crazy stuff can happen production-wise during a given 12-game season.
Josh, David, how long are we going here? Because
we can go another 5.
I wanted to. I want to end with one about college football this weekend in general, but sticking to the A&M. If A&M wins this football game, who on the defensive side of the ball do you think? You talk about that defensive line. My guy that I've got the eye on is the way Edger and Cooper has been playing for this defense and that linebacking core. Because a minute ago you mentioned the front 7. We know that the D-line is full of those. It's an assembly line of 5 stars that they're rolling out there. They're experienced. They're NFL bound. They were highly decorated coming out, and now they're performing. To me, the biggest change in the defense since Miami has been that linebacking core. Is that something that someone that's watching it, I think, with a different lens than you are? What are you seeing from Edger and Cooper, true freshman Torian York, and really the last couple of weeks out of nowhere, Chris Russell?
Yeah, I was going to go linebacker as a whole. You mentioned the individuals there, but when you see so far this year what's given Bama the most issue, it's great to have that dominant front. But when we talk about front, we're not talking about 3 or 4 guys. I mean, in coaching terminology, we're talking about the ability to fit gaps. We're talking about the ability to set the edge. And a lot of times that's happening at the linebacker position. And so especially if you're talking about Jalen Milroe with the dynamic of mobility as part of his game, the way that I don't want to say prevent it, but the way you combat it is you combat it with a lot of athleticism at linebacker. But the difference with A&M is they've got the athleticism there. They don't have to sacrifice a lot of physicality necessarily. And I remember, once upon a time, Bama going out there, and I remember they just wanted to rush 4, and they wanted to drop guys, and they wanted to see if they could stop the rush with 4. Well, they couldn't. I think that was that Derrick Henry team. And so Bama just ran. I'm not so sure that happens that way. That you're not playing the same defense, obviously, but I'm not sure that happens that way this time around. So margins are so important in this game. One tackle, one guy who ends up wrapping up a leg versus just hitting a leg with his fingertips, and a guy gets around the corner for 15 and a first down. That's the difference in having athleticism at linebacker.
Yeah, no question.
I know you want to. Let me just do one national game, and then Billy can close out. I feel like LSU's in trouble this weekend. Do you feel the same way?
So I'm talking to you on a computer, and in another window on this computer, I have our model opened up.
Okay.
And my model is sitting here telling me LSU by 6. And I'm looking at the model and I'm saying, no, Luther Burden's had 100 yards receiving 4 straight games. LSU's already allowed, I think, 13 different, I can't remember if it's 13 different 100-yard receptions. Anyway, it's bad. The secondary is really bad. And I went and watched Missouri in person against Kansas State. That's a good football team. Yeah. Brady Cook hadn't thrown a pick in 348 consecutive attempts. That is 5th in the history of FBS in terms of a streak that long. So I'm pointing at my stomach down here. My gut feels Missouri. My lifeless computer model feels LSU. I don't know what to do. What do you think I should do?
Pate versus the model, one of the battles of all time right here. I can't imagine. I'm picking Missouri because of the home crowd, 11 a.m., devastating loss for LSU last week. I remember talking to guys like Johnny Manziel and Mike Evans in 2013 when they lost back-to-back to Bama, then Auburn. Not back-to-back, mind you, but early in the season when they thought they were going to win the SEC, maybe contend for a national title. And they talk now about how much that fire in the belly and that everything just kind of felt like it was ripped away from them before it even started. LSU's got to be feeling like that to some degree this week. I think Missouri's players and I think those fans and Eli Drinkwitz are going to want it so badly that they're going to prevail in just a wild shootout. And that goes back to, like you said, that's the gut. that's maybe not necessarily the mind, which will tell you that they won't be able to stop Jaden Daniels and that LSU offense at all.
Yeah. I don't know. Look, they've only got one conference loss. So if LSU's players feel like all of their preseason goals have been ripped from them, that's an internal problem.
True.
Also, I'm telling you, I think someone's making the playoff with 2 losses this year. I don't know who it is. Wow. So no one at this point in the season with 1 or 2 losses should feel that all hope is lost. However, the 3 of us could put up a good 250, 300-yard passing performance on the day against LSU right now. That's the issue.
As long as I'm quarterback, as long as I'm QB, you guys can run the route.
Let Nick do that.
Well, my question, Josh, to wrap it up here was, is it LSU, Missouri, or is there any other game in the SEC this weekend that you've got your eye on that maybe either the model's telling you or that you're kind of saying, I don't agree with this, that you think is going to be a sneaky watch this weekend? I know, we got Georgia, Kentucky, and A&M-Alabama.
Right. So I was going to talk about Georgia, Kentucky, because I differ with apparently most people. Most people have that as an upset alert game, and I don't. I think Georgia's going to win the game by double digits. And I was at the Georgia game last week, and Auburn had 200 on the ground against them by the end of the third quarter. And at the same time, you're watching Kentucky hang half a mile on the ground on Florida. And so people are naturally putting those two concepts together. Oh, Kentucky's going to go run it on Georgia. No, they're not. Not like that. They're not. Auburn had a lot of QB run. Leary's got negative rushing yards at quarterback on the season for Kentucky. So Ray Davis is a great player. If they run it down Georgia's throat, I'll just admit I'm wrong. I'll be happy to come on this show and admit I was wrong. But man, terrible, really bumpy performance from Georgia. World class from Kentucky last week. All of a sudden, this is a top 20 matchup in prime time in Athens, Georgia. And I actually think it's a recipe to get Georgia's best game of the year. And I think Leary's got to throw the ball to win. He had 69 passing yards last week. So I'm taking Georgia. So I'm saying that's the anti-upset alert for me.
All right.
Josh, next time you're in town, hopefully this season, we'll go to the Republic. We'll go work out. Got to go work out with Josh.
Yeah, I mean,
the 3 of us, right?
Yeah.
The 3 of us, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
I'll go.
Yeah.
All right.
Nuno, I'll talk. We'll have some fun. Nuno will be in there correcting your form.
No, not his.
Nerding out. I'm just going to talk. We're going to have a good time. I'm going to distract us a little bit, drag out the workout, but I'm there.
Range of motion.
It's all an exercise. Yeah, it's all an exercise.
By the way, I had someone come up to me yesterday, Pate, at the gym, and she said, yeah, your friend that works with you, what's his name? Oh, David. Yeah, she goes, yeah, he came up and was like telling me what I was doing wrong with my form. So he's going up to just random people.
You know what I told her not to tell you too, right?
Well, she told me. So there we are. That's where Nuno's at right now.
I've never been prouder of him than I am right now.
That's my dog right there. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate you, sir.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, buddy.
Later.
See ya.